So Dragon Ball Heroes has had a lot of spin-off mangas, ranging from Victory Mission, the Super Dragon Ball Heroes manga, and Dragon Ball Heroes Charisma Mission. I'm gonna be honest, I've never heard of this thing before. But there's one Dragon Ball Heroes manga that hasn't been talked as much, and that is Dragon Ball Heroes Avatars. It came out almost 4 years ago, and it ended last year. Like genuinely, barely anyone mentions this. And it's not even mentioned on the list of manga adaptations on the fandom wiki. The only reason why I was able to find this is because I was one day just scrolling through and trying to find random Dragon Ball doujins to read. No, nothing like that. Nothing like that. Okay, maybe something like that. But this one caught my eye. It was official, it was distributed by Shonen Jump, and it's more actual Dragon Ball content to read. And this manga was created by Yuji Kasai. It's really a spiritual successor to Victory Mission, except it doesn't take place after Dragon Ball GT or Super. It takes place in the real world, kinda. It's just a gag version of the real world. It had some meta jokes in there. You'll see once I explain it. Honestly, after reading the manga online, I gotta say, initially, I did not really like it. In fact, the original title of this video was supposed to be called The Worst Dragon Ball Manga That You Have Never Read. I even gave it a 4 out of 10 on my anime list. And this is particularly because I did not like the main character. I just found him kind of annoying. Well, anyway, a 4 out of 10 is not going to stop me from getting the actual manga itself. Like literally, I was on holiday and I just found this and I'm like, you know what? I'll buy it. Sure, why not? See the pages behind me. This is indeed in Japanese. So I'll be relying on the translations by DBS Chronicles. So let me summarize what Volume 1 has to offer. Chapter 1. The story of a young boy who aims to become the strongest in Super Dragon Ball Heroes. The story starts off with a young boy being told off by his mom for failing his test. The translation has him called Vita, not to be confused with a poorly received PlayStation handheld. I meant the one from 10 years ago, but that one is even worse. His name is actually Beta, just like Beat from Dragon Ball Heroes, just with an at the end. Well, his excuse for being a dumbass is that he wants to be like Goku, and he wants to achieve that by watching the anime every day and buying all the collectibles as he can. And these are the first signs that he's actually a fake fan, because a real Dragon Ball enjoyer doesn't watch the anime, even if it's 20 episodes. Well, his mom calls him a fucking weeaboo and tries to give him a reality check. Well, this prompted him to run away while wearing a 5kg turtle shell rucksack. We also learned during these pages that Beta's dad is either jobless or just not very high and up and coming in the world, but just like his son, he also likes Dragon Ball, calling it the best. And the way his wife reacts to it, it almost mirrors Goku's relationship with Chi-Chi. Plus, there's more to his dad than what we're led to believe. Meanwhile, Beta is gone tired and he's arrived at the amusement center Karen, like the cat from Dragon Ball, Beerus. From there, Beta meets his friend, Noko Tonari, who's supposed to be like the placeholder for a note. Well, Beta basically killed her in the most chibi style, causing her to do the Yamcha death pose, but also get a Zenkai boost and turn into a great ape. All the while, witnessing this arcade game, Super Dragon Ball Heroes, which apparently he's noticing for the very first time. It is later established that he is in 5th grade, so he's like 10 years old. If you're a Dragon Ball fan, how does Super Dragon Ball Heroes or even Dragon Ball Heroes not appear on your For You page or any of your algorithms? The game is probably older than bro, and I imagine this guy would get a heart attack if he sees Super Saiyan 4 Limit Breaker Goku. Anyhow, he basically calls himself a fake fan that even Goku would be ashamed of. I'm glad that he admits it. And then he begs his friend to teach him how to play. The next few pages are basically a tutorial on how Super Dragon Ball Heroes works. Although I do like the cartoony art style of this manga, I'm just not a fan of the way the gameplay is being illustrated right here. I think a much serious artistic style would help juxtapose these two different appearances. Nevertheless, as we move forward, we see one of the best aspects of this manga is when they actually take attributes from the original source material and use it to create these uncanny, hilarious influences for these new characters. So in this case, this is a rich kid who is based on Frieza, and his 2 attendants are based off of Zarbon and Dodoria. And of course, he's running a Frieza race team. I just want to further note, that is Kuriza right over there, who hasn't had a manga appearance in like over decades. Well, anyway, Riza was able to defeat Noko with the power of nepotism, and this causes Beta to stand up and challenge Riza as his next opponent, even though he just played for the very first time, like 5 minutes ago. However, Riza has to study, so he can't play right now. Beta vows that he'll win, but everyone else doubts it. But in comes this man called the Great Daddy Man. I know that this is supposed to be Beta's dad cosplaying as the Great Saiyan Man, but if a man calls himself the Great Daddy Man and he's teaching kids how to play Super Dragon Ball Heroes, chances are he's a banned ex-Minecraft YouTuber. Moving on, Beta gets in trouble for staying out too late, but his dad is a real one for compromising with his mom, basically telling her that Beta will focus on his studies while also be able to play this game. A week passes by by and Beta's got a whole new team and is gonna face off Frieza. As the battle intensifies, it looks like Beta is gonna pick up the victory, and it ends with Beta winning with Vegeta's Gallic Gun of all things. Frieza demanded a rematch, but his attendants told him that he needed to study. It's pretty wild that the gamer version of Frieza is less racist than the actual one. While Beta was celebrating his victory with his friends, the Great Daddy Man tells him that he's still a noob, but just like everyone else, he will get stronger the more he trains, which makes Beta much more optimistic about his future. On the other hand, his mom found another test of his that he has failed. Now let's move on to chapter 2. The road to becoming the strongest in Super Dragon Ball Heroes is not a day's journey. The story starts off with Beat playing against Noko in the game. Beta ends up being the victor, and this is because he's been training really hard on his charge impact in the game. If you don't know what it is, it's a QTE meter in which you have to press the button at the correct time, and you most likely do the most damage, as well as get a super attack in your next phase. You'll notice in this manga that they'll make the charge impact into a big deal, but as someone who's played World Mission, it really isn't. It's all dependent on your team's formation. Nevertheless, Beta makes it into a big deal by explaining that his dad throws balls at him that contains numbers that are stuck on them, so that he can read them as soon as he's catching it. He does admit that his dad's balls sometimes hits his face. The other kids try to replicate this as well, but they don't realize they're about to hit someone. However, the balls get deflected back to their faces, and the guy that deflected them was able to read out the numbers on the balls. And as you can see, he's reminiscent of the famous Dragon Ball character Korin. Also on the same page, Great Daddy Man has been called the Great Pervert Man. This is a reference to the fact that he was part of the Smash Bros. Competitive community during 2020. Well, anyway, this boy is one of the Elite Four of Super Dragon Ball Heroes, and his name is Roy Desto. Well, he came to look for some Puffu Puffu pudding. That's some Master Roshi levels of referencing. Well, Beta wants to have a match with him, but Roy thinks he's a pleb, and the only way he'll be able to play against him if he had some pudding. Did someone say pudding? So earlier that day, the Great Daddy Man was caught on a live stream trying to meet up with a 13-year-old girl, get some pudding, and he used the pudding as leverage to get Roy to face off against Beta and Dragon Ball Heroes. Essentially, this is a readaptation of the Battle of Gods arc. Beta ends up losing, but he leaves a massive impression on towards Roy. In the meanwhile, he's eating his pudding in the train, and he's being told off by a character that looks like Tien. This is a reference to the fact that Tien is indeed on God level. Chapter 3. The key to victory is ... So this chapter is a bit of a filler episode. It starts off with Beta forgetting to bring his cards over, and instead of going back home to collect them, he overhears these two players playing Dragon Ball Heroes. Yeah, these characters are based off of the Buu saga. As you can see, late Inoko is meant to represent Majin Buu. Third year junior high students are called Babiko and Dabra, who are based off of Babidi and Dr. Disrespect. And as you can see, the doctor is smashing this kid, saying some inappropriate stuff to him, all for late to pay him 1,000 yen as he owes him tuition fees because he wants to get good at the game. Beta tries to stop him from extorting this kid. However, Dabber tries to play it off as if he hasn't done anything wrong. He was about to smash Beta too, but that's when the homeroom teacher, Teacher Kibito, man, they just ran out of names at this point, basically scares them off. Beta befriends Late and trains him to be better at the game, and they find out the root of the issue is that his charge impact is really bad. The next few pages are them just hanging out and also training to get good at the game, all for them to realize that if Late just goes for the bottom of the meter for the charge impact, then he will accidentally go for the perfect. Soon after, Late challenges Dabra for a rematch, and as expected, Late wins. Dabra tries to extort the kids for money again, but Teacher Kibito overhears his Twitch whispers, so it looks like he's banned from the arcade. Beta suggests to Late that they both should enter this year's national tournament, except Late brings up that the qualifying round is already over. Beta starts to panic, but then the Great Daddy Man appears and tells him that there's still a chance. Only 8 players can qualify for the national tournament, out of which 7 are selected from preliminary rounds. The final players will be selected from the Tenkaichi Challenge tournament that is next month. So if Beta wins this, then he can go on to the national tournament. And next up is chapter 4, the Tenkaichi Challenge tournament. The chapter begins with Beta being excited that the tournament looks exactly like the one from the anime. The Tenkaichi Budokai is the place where Goku fought Jackie Chun, Tenchan Hana, Ma Jr. and Oob. Ugh. And you're back to being a Dragon Ball otaku again. Instantly from this tournament, you can just tell that these characters are going to be based off of more Dragon Ball characters, which is good. Then in comes Mr. Tao doing his best Family Guy impersonation. And yeah, this is basically Mercenary Tao if he's like Hawaiian? I like the fact that the pillar he's holding is a card holder. Well, anywho, his first opponent is basically a duplicate of General Blue from the anime, and he beats him the same way, kinda. Instead of putting his tongue by the temple of his head, he uses it for the charge impact button. Beta also goes on to win his match, and thus it's player Tao versus Beta. The bout is almost evenly matched, but it just seems like Beta is just slightly better. Mr. Tao is trying to do his ultimate move from Tenkaichi Free, but he ended up forgetting which Dragon Ball game he was playing. Also, am I crazy, or is that a traced out Dokkan losing animation? Well, anyway, Beta is now the victor, with Mr. Tao threatening to kill Beta. But that's just gamer talk, everyone does it online. And now Beta's already heading to the Nationals. Didn't he only have like 2 matches? The great daddy man is crying in the corner, just being proud of his son, and Beta is just so excited to face off Roy again at the Nationals. Well, that was a fun read, but does this mean I'm going to be reviewing Volume 2 next, or even Chapter 5? No, because I can't find actual translations for Volume 2 or even this next chapter. It's not because, it got cancelled or anything like that. It very much still exists. In fact, what I'm holding right now is Volume 5 of the manga. It's still in Japanese, yeah. But for whatever reason, I can't find any scans for Volume 2 or the next few chapters. For all I know, people just don't care about it, or there's no fan intrigue for it. And after this manga ended, there was a follow-up sequel for Super Divers, but the thing is, I have no idea what that's even about, because once again, not only can I not find translations for it, I can't even find scans. This is where I'm going to be venting a little bit, because the internet is trying its best to archive as much information and data as much as possible, because preservation is very, very crucial and much easier to do in our day and age. I did talk about it in my last video that it felt like Dragon Ball Heroes was gatekeep from us until Super Dragon Ball Heroes World Mission came out, and it was nice to know that Bandai was, giving us some stuff for it. But seeing stuff like the Super Dragon Ball Heroes anime or even the manga, but not being fully distributed to the West is kind of concerning for me, because personally, I'm not sure why is that the case. My only assumption is that in terms of manga sales and stuff like that, there's not a big demand for it, which is kind of confusing, because it's Dragon Ball, which is in like the top 20 highest grossing franchises of all time. It's weird that stuff like Dragon Ball SD can be translated into Spanish or French, but you're telling me there's not a demand for it in English? I know there's like Attack on Titan chibi stuff, because I've said it a few times on this channel. Dragon Ball is one of those franchises that can go on forever. It's like a Star Wars or even a Marvel. You can keep on milking it forever and ever, but it feels like the people who own the rights to it kind of hold itself back from doing that. I remember there was a big uproar for this manga that time I got reincarnated as Yamcha, and it eventually got released here in the West. So the reason why I'm even mentioning all of this is because I think that might have influenced my opinion on the Super Dragon Ball Heroes Avatar's manga. I wanted something new within the Dragon Ball universe, not something that is set outside of it. Overall, the Avatar's manga is just fine. It's not perfect, it's not amazing, but it's not the worst thing in the world. But yeah, till then, me covering the first volume of this manga is probably the most we got out of this franchise after Daima, and probably for a while. And my backlight just stopped working, okay. Really fits the mood. So I didn't want to end the video on a sad note, so let me just get some extra points out here while I still can. I do think Super Avatar's manga is kind of decent, and maybe even in some cases for the comedy aspect, it's probably not on par with the original Dragon Ball, but that's just how I feel. But like I said before, the action does seem a bit underwhelming, and who knows, maybe it has improved over time. I still gotta skim over that Volume 5 manga. And something that I did kind of gloss over was that it sometimes did feel like I was reading a full-on tutorial of the game. However, I think that mainly stemmed from the first chapter. So overall, I'll raise my 4 out of 10 score to at least a 6 out of 10. I think that's only fair. And yeah, that is it. I'm going to be working on the Dragon Ball in 2016 video next. Hopefully that'll be out by May 9th. Unfortunately for me, that's going to be a very long video to record and edit. So hopefully I'll be able to get it on time. So thanks for watching. Tell me what you thought about Super Dragon Ball Heroes Avatars, and see ya next time.